Welcome everyone to this special explainer from Revival Waves of Glory Ministries. Today we are diving deep into a subject that is absolutely central to understanding the spiritual world around us. We're going to be exploring the powerful concepts found in Bill Vincent's book, Heavenly Warfare, The Battle Between Angels and Demons. The core idea here is that there's a very real, very literal conflict happening just beyond what we can see, a war with ancient origins that has profound consequences for us today.
You know, Bill Vincent really sets the stage with this single, powerful idea. When we think about angels intervening in our lives, our minds usually go to guardian angels, stories of divine protection and miracles. And that's absolutely true. But the book argues that that's only one side of the coin. The central tension, the very heart of heavenly warfare, is that intervention comes from two very different opposing sides. You have heavenly beings sent to serve and help, but you also have fallen demonic angels who are actively working to intervene for evil. This two-sided view of the spiritual realm is the key that unlocks everything we're about to get into.
So to really get a handle on this cosmic battlefield, we're going to follow the story right from the very beginning. First, we'll identify the two opposing armies in this war. Then, we're going to rewind all the way back to the rebellion that started it all, the one led by Lucifer. From there, we'll investigate a really shocking event from before the Great Flood that literally blurred the lines between worlds. And finally, we'll bring it all home and connect these ancient events to what the book says about the spiritual warfare happening all around us today.
All right, first things first, let's meet the key players in this conflict. To even begin to understand the idea of heavenly warfare, the book says you have to know the two sides, the two armies involved, the angels who remain faithful and serve God, and those who made the choice to rebel. The book lays out two forces with completely opposite missions. On one side, you have the heavenly hosts. These are described as ministering spirits, sent specifically to serve believers. The author shares incredible accounts of them literally participating in worship services, bringing an atmosphere of tangible healing, anointing, and miracles. But then, on the other side, you have the fallen angels, which the book equates with demons. Their entire purpose is intervention for evil. Their goal is to build a rival kingdom in rebellion against God and to influence humanity towards what the book calls perversion and immorality. Two armies, two totally different assignments.
So that begs the question, right? How did this rival kingdom of fallen angels even come to exist in the first place? Well, for that, we have to go back, way back, to the very beginning of the conflict. We have to look at the first and the most significant rebellion, which was led by the powerful archangel Lucifer.
The book points to this exact passage from Isaiah as Lucifer's declaration of war, his manifesto of rebellion. You can feel the ambition dripping from these words. It wasn't just a simple disagreement. This was about a hostile takeover. According to the source, these 5 famous "I will" statements reveal his deepest desire: to seize ultimate authority for himself, to become like the Most High. This is the ambition, the pride, that triggered his fall from grace and set the entire stage for all of heavenly warfare.
Now here's where the book makes a really unique and powerful theological point. It argues that Lucifer's envy, his rebellion, it wasn't primarily directed at God the Father, but specifically at the Son, at Jesus. The text actually frames it as a kind of sibling rivalry. It suggests that Lucifer, as this incredible archangel, a son of God, saw the destined glory and exaltation of Jesus, and he wanted that position for himself. This cosmic rivalry, this ancient conflict, according to the source, reached its ultimate climax at the cross. And while it looked like a victory for Satan, the book points us to Colossians to argue that this was the very moment Jesus disarmed the principalities and powers, winning the ultimate victory for all time.
And to really understand the massive scale of this rebellion, we have to look at the numbers. The book cites Revelation chapter 12, which says that Lucifer, depicted as a great dragon, in his fall swept a full third of the stars of heaven, which are interpreted as angels, down with him. Just think about that. This wasn't some small, isolated insurrection. This was the formation of a vast, organized, rival spiritual kingdom that, according to the source, is still very much active today.
Now, our third section covers one of the most significant and, frankly, controversial events detailed in the book. The author argues that long after Lucifer's fall, another major angelic transgression happened. This one was so profound that it blurred the very boundaries between the heavenly and the earthly realms, and it all went down just before the time of Noah's flood.
This single verse from Genesis 6 is the absolute foundation for this part of the book's narrative. It describes an interaction between two groups, the sons of God and the daughters of men.
Now, the author asserts that this wasn't just a story about two different human tribes intermarrying. No, this was something far deeper, far more unnatural, and with far greater consequences. The entire key to the book's argument here lies in this one definition. It argues that the phrase sons of God, in this context, does not refer to human beings. Instead, by cross-referencing this with the book of Job, where we see the sons of God presenting themselves before the Lord in heaven, the author concludes that this term explicitly means angelic beings. So, according to this interpretation, the story in Genesis is about fallen angels seeing human women and taking them as wives.
And what was the result of these forbidden, unnatural unions? The Nephilim. The source explains that this Hebrew word comes from a root that means to fall, and these beings were their offspring. And Genesis itself describes them as the heroes of old, men of renown. Now here's where it gets really interesting. The author makes a direct connection, suggesting that ancient stories from cultures all over the world, like Greek mythology with its tales of gods like Zeus coming down from the heavens to father heroes like Hercules, are actually just distorted cultural memories of these very real historical events.
The consequence for these specific angels was incredibly severe. The book points to 2 Peter chapter 2, which says that God cast them down to hell. But here's the crucial detail the author highlights. The original Greek word used here isn't the typical word for hell. It's Tartarus. He describes it as a unique, deep, inescapable place of confinement, a special prison created and reserved only for this specific group of angels who abandoned their own home. This, he argues, just goes to show how incredibly severe their transgression was in the eyes of God. You know, if you find this kind of deep dive into spiritual matters fascinating and you want to learn more, I highly encourage you to check out more of Bill Vincent's work at revivalwavesofgloryministries.com. There's a wealth of information there.
Okay, this brings us to our final and maybe most important section. How does any of this ancient history, Lucifer's rivalry, the Nephilim, Tartarus, how does it relate to the world that you and I live in right now? Well, the book's final argument is that these ancient events are not just history. They're actually a blueprint for understanding the spiritual battles of our modern era. The author uses this critical quote from Jesus himself as the bridge connecting the past to the present. The argument is simple yet profound. The spiritual and moral climate of the world just before the flood is a direct parallel, a mirror image for the end times. The book suggests that if we can truly understand what was happening in Noah's day, we can understand what's happening in our own.
So what exactly were those conditions? The book points right back to Genesis, which describes Noah's world as being utterly corrupt and completely filled with violence. It then draws direct parallels to today, pointing to what it views as rapidly escalating moral corruption in our society, things like hate crimes and just pervasive violence everywhere. The author specifically focuses on sexual immorality, arguing that the same perverse influence from fallen angels that led to that pre-flood transgression is now at work again very actively in modern culture and media.
And this is really the ultimate takeaway for the reader. This is the core message of the book for us today. It's that the problems we see in society, the chaos, the division, the corruption, they aren't merely human-made issues. They are symptoms of a much larger, much deeper conflict. The source contends that we are engaged in a spiritual war, not against other people, not against flesh and blood, but against these ancient, perverse angelic forces, the principalities and powers that have been at war with God and humanity from the very beginning.
So we'll leave you with this final, powerful thought, which is drawn from the core premise of heavenly warfare. If we were to truly adopt this perspective, to view the world not just as a physical space, but as a spiritual battlefield where these dual forces of angels are constantly at play, how might that completely reframe our understanding of history, of culture, of current events, and even of our own daily lives and struggles? It's a profound question that really gets to the very heart of the material we've explored today. I really hope this has given you a lot to think about. For more incredible teachings like this, please be sure to visit revivalwavesofgloryministries.com. Thank you for listening to the Deep Dive Podcast.